Welcome, brave souls, to my corner of the macabre. Here, we delve into chilling tales that will send shivers down your spine. If you enjoy the thrill of horror stories, you're in the right place. Sit back, let your imagination run wild, and immerse yourself in the darkness. If you find yourself captivated, please give a like and subscribe for more spine-tingling content. Your support means the world. Now, let's begin our journey into the shadows. Enjoy the fright. My name is Edgar Hargrove, and I've lived in this weathered old cabin for the better part of 70 years. Tucked deep in the heart of Blackthorn Forest, I've always preferred the company of the towering pines and the whisper of the wind to the bustle of towns and the chatter of people. At 75, I've seen my share of seasons pass, each winter more biting, each summer more suffocating, but none have prepared me for the creature that lurked beyond my door this past autumn. The forest has always been alive, thrumming with the sounds of nature, chirping birds, rustling leaves, the distant call of a fox, but lately it feels different. The air hangs heavy, charged with a tension I can't shake, as if the trees themselves hold their breath. I have a hunting rifle, a trusty Remington, leaning against the wall, a relic from my younger days when I roamed these woods with purpose. Now, it's just a reminder of the hunter I used to be, and a tool I may need more than I ever anticipated. It started one chilly evening, the kind that sends shivers down your spine and makes the shadows stretch longer. I was seated by the crackling fire, lost in thoughts of days gone by when I heard it, a low, guttural growl that rumbled through the ground beneath me. At first, I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks or perhaps a deer caught in a thicket, but deep down, an unsettling feeling clawed at me, warning me that it was something much worse. As dusk fell, I grabbed my rifle, a feeling of dread settling in my stomach. I stepped outside, the chill biting at my skin, and peered into the darkening woods. The moon hung low, casting silvery light through the branches, but the deeper shadows remained impenetrable. I scanned the tree line, my heart pounding in my chest, but all I saw were the familiar silhouettes of my surroundings. Nothing unusual, at least not yet. Days passed, and the growling grew more frequent, echoing through the nights. It was a sound that sent shivers down my spine, one that no creature I knew could produce. This growl carried an unnatural timbre, a mix of beastly fury and primordial hunger. I found myself checking the locks on my doors, listening for anything beyond the normal cadence of the forest. I told myself I was being foolish, that perhaps my old age was catching up with me, twisting my perceptions into something monstrous. But then came the night of the full moon. The silvery light flooded the clearing around my cabin, illuminating the trees like skeletal hands reaching for the sky. I had never felt so uneasy. I was certain I wasn't alone. The growling had transformed into a series of howls, chilling and haunting. They bounced off the trees, an echo of despair that seemed to ripple through the very ground beneath me. With my rifle in hand, I stepped onto my porch. The world was eerily silent, the usual sounds of the night silenced as if the forest itself was holding its breath. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity propelled me forward, deeper into the woods. I was hunting something, though I didn't yet know what. As I ventured further, the howls grew louder, reverberating through my bones. It was then that I caught my first glimpse of it, a shadow flickering at the edge of the tree line. It was massive, easily the size of a bear, but the way it moved, it was all wrong. There was an elegance to its gait, a predatory grace that sent a rush of fear through my veins. I tightened my grip on the rifle, my heart racing as the creature stepped into the moonlight. Its fur was a dark, matted mass, blending seamlessly with the night. Yellow eyes glowed with a fierce intelligence, a primal hunger that sent me stumbling backward. It was not a wolf, nor was it anything I had ever encountered. This creature was a nightmare made flesh, a monstrous wolf, but far more than that, there was something otherworldly about it. I stood frozen, unable to look away as it watched me with those piercing eyes. The air felt electric, charged with an ancient power. I wanted to run, to flee back to the safety of my cabin, but something held me in place. Fear, fascination, or perhaps both. In that moment, I understood that I was not the hunter, I was the prey. With a sudden movement, the creature lunged back into the shadows, leaving me trembling on the forest floor. My instincts kicked in, and I raised my rifle, ready to fire, but my mind swirled with doubt. Should I shoot? What if I hit something that wasn't meant to be hit? My hesitation cost me dearly. Before I could react, the creature was gone, swallowed whole by the darkness. For nights after, I couldn't shake the image of that beast from my mind. I returned to my cabin, but sleep eluded me. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle outside felt like a harbinger of doom. I could hear the whispers of the forest growing louder, urging me to leave, to escape while I still could. But where would I go? This was my home. I had nowhere else. The following evening, emboldened by a mixture of fear and stubbornness, I ventured out once more. Armed with my rifle and a flickering lantern, I felt a fragile sense of security. I called out into the night, desperate to confront the terror that had invaded my life. "Show yourself," I shouted, the sound of my voice a brittle thing in the cold night air. But all I received in return was the silence of the forest, pregnant with anticipation. And then, just as before, the growl rolled through the trees, deep and resonant. It was closer this time, filling my ears with its haunting timbre. I turned in its direction, every nerve in my body on high alert, but it was only when I saw the shadows shift that I realized I was not alone. There it stood, no more than 10 yards away. The creature had come back, emerging from the depths of the darkness as if summoned by my call. Its body was a mass of sinewy muscle, glistening in the moonlight, and its eyes, those damn eyes, filled with a predatory hunger that seemed to pierce through the very essence of my being. It was both magnificent and terrifying, a creation of nightmares brought to life. I raised my rifle, fingers trembling, heart pounding against my ribs. And then I hesitated once more. This creature was not just a monster. It was something else, something that defied description. It felt as if the very fabric of reality warped around it, creating a rift between the known and the unknown. The forest, once familiar, transformed into a labyrinth of shadows, leaving me lost in a sea of confusion. The creature growled again, but this time there was something different about it, an almost curious tilt to its head, as if assessing me. For a fleeting moment, I felt a connection, a thread binding us across the chasm of fear. It was as if it were waiting for me to make a choice, to either run or stand my ground. In that instant, I understood the truth. I was not just witnessing a monster. I was witnessing something ancient, something that had roamed these woods long before my cabin stood and would continue to do so long after I was gone. A primal force that demanded respect, not fear. But then doubt crept in, whispering insidious thoughts into my mind. What if this creature was sent to punish me? What if my very existence disturbed the delicate balance of nature? I had always hunted, always taken from these woods without thought, and now I was being watched. As I lowered my rifle, the creature stepped back into the shadows, its eyes never leaving mine. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, mingled with something darker, a sense of abandonment, as if I were letting go of my last tether to safety. Days turned into weeks, and the howling persisted, a constant reminder of what lurked just beyond the tree line. I tried to convince myself that I had made the right choice, but the memory of that creature haunted my dreams. I could hear its growl echoing in my mind, feel the weight of its gaze pressing against my soul. Eventually, winter crept in, covering the forest in a thick blanket of snow. The silence felt suffocating, but it also brought a certain peace, a reprieve from the terror that had gripped me. I found solace in the flickering light of the fire, warmth wrapping around me like an old friend. But even as I settled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had not seen the last of the creature. One night, the howling returned, more insistent and desperate than ever. It filled the air, echoing through the trees like a mournful lament. I grabbed my rifle once more, the weight of it familiar and reassuring. But as I stepped outside, I found myself paralyzed by uncertainty. Was I the hunter, or was I merely a spectator in a tale that had unfolded long before I entered the scene? And then in the distance, I saw it, a silhouette against the white backdrop of the snow, watching me with those same piercing yellow eyes. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and awe coursing through me. I raised the rifle, but this time I hesitated. Did I really want to pull the trigger? Did I want to end whatever strange connection we shared? As I lowered the rifle once more, the creature stepped back into the shadows, its gaze lingering for just a moment longer before it vanished, leaving me alone once more. The howling faded into the distance, replaced by an oppressive silence that enveloped the forest like a shroud. I stood there, trembling, questioning everything I had ever believed about the natural world, about my role in it. Returning to the cabin, I felt hollow, the weight of my decisions pressing heavily on my chest. I could no longer ignore the truth. I was not just an old man in a cabin. I was an interloper in a realm that had its own rules, its own inhabitants, and its own balance. The creature I had encountered was more than a monster. It was a guardian, perhaps even an avenger of the forest, and I was its unwitting intruder. Night after night, I heard the echoes of its howls, each one a reminder of my choice to lower the rifle, to show respect instead of aggression. As the first snow melted and spring arrived, I found solace in the beauty of the forest awakening around me, but the presence of the creature lingered, like a shadow cast by a setting sun. I knew it was still out there, lurking just beyond my sight, a reminder of what I had witnessed. Then one fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the forest transformed into a world of silhouettes, I heard a soft rustling just outside my cabin. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I grabbed my rifle, instinctually ready for anything. My heart raced as I stepped outside, the chill of the evening air wrapping around me like a vice. What I saw sent a jolt of terror through my veins. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood the creature, larger than I remembered, its eyes glowing like twin lanterns in the dark. But this time it didn't growl or howl. It merely watched me, a stillness settling over the forest as if the entire world was holding its breath. I could feel the weight of its gaze, as if it were searching my soul for something. I took a step back, rifle trembling in my hands, uncertain of what to do. Did it sense my fear? Did it understand my hesitation? In that moment, I realized I was no longer just an observer. I was a part of this ancient dance, an unwilling participant in a story that unfolded with every heartbeat. The creature took a step forward, and instinct kicked in. I raised the rifle, but the thought of pulling the trigger paralyzed me. What would I gain? What would I lose? The creature seemed to sense my turmoil, tilting its head, an almost inquisitive gesture that sparked a flicker of hope within me. Perhaps it didn't want to harm me. Perhaps it was trying to communicate something beyond my understanding. In that heartbeat of silence, the world fell away. The growls of the past echoed in my mind, a warning that resonated deep within me. And then, with a slow, deliberate movement, the creature turned and melted back into the shadows, disappearing into the forest like a wisp of smoke. I lowered my rifle, a wave of realization washing over me. Was it fear that had driven me? Or was it something deeper, a primal instinct to assert my dominance over a force I didn't fully understand? I stood alone, surrounded by the whispering trees, grappling with the question of what I had witnessed. Had I encountered a monster, or had I simply caught a glimpse of a world I had long forgotten? As I retreated into my cabin, I felt the heavy weight of the past pressing down on me. I thought about all the times I had hunted, all the animals I had taken from the forest, and all the moments I had felt invincible. But now, I was merely a visitor in a realm that had its own rules, a realm where my actions echoed in ways I could not comprehend. The nights passed, and with each one, the memories of that creature haunted me, leaving me questioning my place in this wild expanse. I found myself listening more intently to the sounds of the forest, attuning my senses to the delicate balance of life around me. The growling, the howling, the whispers of the wind, all of it became a part of me, a reminder of the ancient dance of predator and prey. And yet, as time wore on, I wondered if I would ever see that creature again. Was it a guardian or a harbinger of doom? Would it return to remind me of my transgressions, or had I made peace in that fleeting moment of understanding? I spent my days wandering through the forest, searching for answers, but they eluded me like the shadows that danced between the trees. In my heart, I knew that I would never fully understand what I had witnessed that night. The creature remained a mystery, a question mark etched in the fabric of my existence. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps it wasn't about understanding at all. but about respecting the boundaries that separate man from nature and embracing the unknown that lies just beyond the edge of the light. As I sat by the fire, the crackling warmth offering a small measure of comfort, I realized that my life would never be the same. The woods were alive, filled with secrets and shadows that stretched beyond my comprehension. And as the howls echoed through the night, I found myself wondering if I would ever find the answers I sought, or if I would forever be left questioning what I had seen, what I had felt, and what it truly meant to be a part of this wild, untamed world. My name is Tyler, and I'm 16 years old. Ever since I can remember, my younger brother Ben and I have loved exploring the dense woods behind our house, the towering trees and tangled underbrush forming a playground that seemed endless. The forest was our escape, a place where we could roam freely, letting our imaginations run wild. We knew every path, every hidden clearing, but that summer, everything changed. It started as an ordinary day, the sun shining bright overhead, the sound of chirping birds echoing through the trees. Ben, with his boundless energy and curiosity, urged me to venture deeper than we ever had before. "Come on, Tyler. Let's see what's past the old oak," he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. I hesitated for a moment, recalling the tales our parents used to tell us about the woods, stories of strange sounds and things that lurked just beyond sight. But Ben's enthusiasm was infectious, so we went. As we walked, the familiar sights began to fade. The underbrush thickened and the sunlight struggled to break through the canopy above. The air felt different, heavier somehow, as if the forest was holding its breath. "This place is cool," Ben exclaimed, oblivious to the creeping unease that slithered up my spine. I forced a smile, trying to match his excitement, but an unsettling feeling gnawed at me. The deeper we went, the quieter it became. The birds fell silent. The rustling leaves ceased, and the world around us transformed into a hushed void. I glanced at Ben, who was now peering at a cluster of wildflowers, utterly captivated. "Hey, Ben," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "maybe we should head back?" But my brother was already wandering further, oblivious to my warning. Reluctantly, I followed him, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. Just as we reached a clearing, I spotted something strange, a large, dark shape crouched among the trees. My heart raced as I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was unlike anything I had ever encountered, its fur matted and shadowy, blending perfectly with the gloom of the forest. The creature was massive, easily the size of a bear, but there was an unsettling grace to it, a predatory elegance that made my skin— "Tyler, look at this," Ben called out, distracted by a peculiar stone formation nearby. I forced my gaze away from the creature and hurried to his side, my pulse still racing. "Let's go back," I urged, my voice shaky. "We should have never come this far." Ben pouted, clearly wanting to explore more, but I didn't want to risk it. The woods had taken on a different atmosphere, a heaviness that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. "Just a little further?" Ben pleaded, and against my better judgment, I nodded. As we moved forward, I could feel a pair of eyes watching us from the tree line, the sensation prickling at my skin. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the air, reverberating off the trees like a warning bell. My blood ran cold, and I instinctively grabbed Ben's arm, pulling him closer. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart racing. Ben's eyes widened, a mix of excitement and fear. "Maybe it's a bear," he exclaimed, completely unaware of the danger. "No, Ben, we need to go. Now," I insisted, my voice more urgent. But before I could turn back, the creature emerged from the shadows, stepping into the dim light of the clearing. It was massive, even larger than I had initially thought, with sharp, gleaming teeth and eyes that glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. A primal instinct kicked in, and I felt my body freeze as it stared at us, unblinking. I had never seen anything like it, a wolf, but far more terrifying. It looked like a distorted reflection of a creature that belonged in a nightmare. Its fur bristled as it took a step forward, and I finally found my voice, screaming, "Run!" I yanked Ben's hand, and we sprinted back the way we came, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Branches clawed at our skin, and the underbrush tugged at our feet, but we didn't stop. Behind us, the growl transformed into a chilling howl. echoing through the trees, filling the air with dread. I could hear its heavy footsteps crashing through the foliage, drawing closer with every frantic step we took. "Tyler, it's right behind us," Ben cried, his voice laced with terror. I didn't dare look back. All I could think about was putting as much distance as possible between us and that creature. My lungs burned, and panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I focused on the path ahead, praying we'd find our way back to safety. Suddenly, I stumbled over a root and fell hard against the ground. "Tyler!" Ben shouted, his voice filled with fear. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing as I glanced over my shoulder. The creature stood at the edge of the clearing, eyes locked onto us, its powerful form poised and ready. It seemed to sense our fear, feeding off it, and I felt the urge to scream again, but I bit it back, forcing myself to think. "Come on," I yelled, grasping Ben's hand and pulling him along as we barreled deeper into the woods. Every instinct told me to keep running, but a small voice in my mind urged me to find a way to outsmart it. "We need to find a tree to climb," I shouted, desperately scanning the area for anything that could provide a momentary refuge. We ducked behind a massive oak, its gnarled branches stretching overhead like the arms of a protector. I quickly glanced around, trying to gauge how far the creature was. To my horror, I saw it prowling just a few yards away, its movements fluid and silent. It sniffed the ground, its eyes darting back and forth as if trying to pick up our scent. "Tyler, what are we going to do?" Ben's voice quivered with fear. I felt a rush of protectiveness wash over me, and I whispered back, "We'll wait for it to move on, just stay quiet." My heart raced as I strained to hear the creature, the air thick with tension. But then, as if sensing our presence, it paused, its head snapping in our direction. I felt my blood run cold. "It knows we're here," I gasped, holding my breath as it took a slow step toward us. In that moment, I felt utterly powerless, trapped between instinct and sheer terror. Just then, a noise broke the silence, an unexpected rustling in the bushes nearby. The creature's attention shifted for a brief moment, and I seized the opportunity. "Now, Ben, run!" I shouted, and we bolted in the opposite direction, hearts pounding as we pushed through the thick underbrush. We stumbled through the trees, branches tearing at our clothes, the sounds of the forest swirling around us like a storm. I felt the creature gaining on us, its growl echoing through the darkness, relentless. We were trapped in a nightmare, with no escape in sight. Finally, we burst into a clearing, panting and wide-eyed. There, in the center, stood an ancient stone structure, covered in moss and vines, a crumbling remnant of something lost to time. "In there!" I yelled, pointing toward the structure. We dashed inside, finding ourselves in a dim, cool space. The creature paused at the entrance, growling low and menacing, its eyes glowing in the darkness. I pressed my back against the wall, my breath hitching in my throat. I could see Ben trembling beside me, eyes wide with fear. "What do we do now?" he whispered, his voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. All I could think about was the raw power of that creature, the way it had stalked us through the woods, and how close we had come to becoming its prey. The growling echoed through the air, vibrating the very stones of the structure, and I knew we were still in grave danger. Suddenly the growling stopped, and an eerie silence enveloped us. I glanced at Ben, who looked just as confused as I felt. "Maybe it left," he suggested hopefully. But deep down, I knew better. That creature wasn't just going to let us go. I carefully edged toward the entrance, peering outside. The forest seemed alive with anticipation, and then I saw it, the creature standing just outside, as if it were waiting for us. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, locked onto mine, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was a primal dance of predator and prey, a game I didn't want to play. "What do we do?" Ben whimpered, pulling on my arm. I didn't have an answer. My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out, a way to protect my brother from the horror outside. Just then, a rustling sound echoed from the shadows behind the creature, and I froze. Another set of eyes glinted in the darkness, watching us. My heart sank. We were surrounded. The growl returned, louder and more ferocious than before, and the creature lunged forward, its massive form blocking our only escape. I grabbed Ben and backed away, pressing deeper into the shadows of the structure, desperation clawing at my throat. "Stay close to me," I whispered fiercely. The creature advanced, its breath heavy and rancid, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. I had to think, to find a way to protect us both. I glanced around the stone walls, searching for something, anything that could help us. There was an old, rusted shovel propped against one wall, and I dashed for it, gripping the handle tightly. "Stay back," I yelled, brandishing the shovel like a weapon. But the creature didn't flinch. It continued to advance. Eyes locked onto me with an intensity that made me feel small and insignificant. "Tyler, please," Ben cried, fear lacing his voice. I could hear the growling building to a crescendo, and I knew we were running out of time. "We need to make a break for it," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "On my count. 1, 2, 3. We bolted toward the back of the structure, hoping to find an exit. But as we moved, the creature lunged at us, its powerful body crashing against the wall. I barely managed to dodge its sharp teeth as I pulled Ben behind me. We pushed through a broken window at the back, tumbling into the underbrush beyond. Scrambling to our feet, we sprinted through the trees, the sounds of the creature crashing after us. The forest felt like a labyrinth, branches whipping against our faces as we ran, breathless and terrified. Finally, we broke through the tree line, stumbling into the familiar path that led home. I could hear the creature howling behind us, a sound that sent chills down my spine. We pushed on, legs burning, fear propelling us forward until we reached the safety of our backyard. As we burst into the clearing near our house, we collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. "Tyler, what was that?" Ben panted, wide-eyed. I shook my head, struggling to comprehend what we had just experienced. "I don't know, but it was real," I whispered, the weight of it settling heavily on my shoulders. I felt like I had just crossed a line into a world I wasn't meant to enter. Days passed, but the memory of that creature lingered, haunting my thoughts. I replayed the events over and over, questioning every detail. What had we stumbled upon? What was that monster lurking in the woods? And why had it chosen to hunt us? As summer faded into fall, I found myself unable to return to those woods. The thrill of adventure had been replaced by an all-consuming dread. Ben would ask me to explore, but I always found an excuse to stay away, the echoes of howls still ringing in my ears. Yet, no matter how hard I tried to forget, the forest remained alive in my mind, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. As I sat on my bed, staring out at the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling that something still watched from the shadows, waiting for the moment I would venture back into its domain. What had I witnessed that day? A monster? A guardian? Or something else entirely? The questions gnawed at me, the answers forever just out of reach. And as the wind rustled the leaves outside, I wondered if I would ever be free of the haunting memory of that creature, or if it would always linger, a shadow in the depths of my mind. My name is Mark, and I'm 32 years old. There's nothing I love more than camping with my friends. The thrill of adventure calling us into the heart of the forest, where the trees stand tall and the stars shine bright. Every summer, we would gather for a week of hiking, fishing, and telling stories around the campfire. But that summer was different, and I still can't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked just beyond the trees. It was a warm Friday evening when we set out, the sun hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows over the winding trail. My friends, Jake, Matt, and Sarah, were all in high spirits, laughing and joking as we hiked. We had chosen a remote spot far from the crowds, a clearing surrounded by dense woods that promised a sense of seclusion. The kind of place where you could really escape the noise of the world. As we reached the clearing, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The tall pines framed the campsite beautifully, and the gentle rustle of the leaves in the breeze sounded like whispers from the forest. We quickly set up our tents, sharing jokes and stories, the laughter mingling with the sounds of nature. It felt perfect, just like every other year until night began to fall. After dinner, we gathered around the fire, its flickering light dancing in our eyes. As the darkness deepened, the forest seemed to come alive with the sounds of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. The warmth of the flames contrasted sharply with the cool night air, creating an atmosphere of comfort and camaraderie. We shared ghost stories, each tale more chilling than the last, but none of us took them seriously, at least not until later. "Did you hear that?" Jake suddenly said, his voice breaking the laughter. We all paused, straining to listen. A low growl echoed through the trees, deep and resonant. It wasn't the sound of any animal I recognized. My stomach twisted and I exchanged uneasy glances with my friends. "Probably just a bear," Matt said, trying to sound casual, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "They're more scared of us than we are of them." "Yeah, right," Sarah scoffed, but even she seemed a little unsettled. "Let's just keep the fire going. Bears don't like fire." We resumed our stories, but the atmosphere had shifted. The growl lingered in the back of my mind, a reminder of the untamed wilderness surrounding us. As the night wore on, the fire crackled and popped, sending sparks into the starry sky. But every now and then I could hear it again, the low growl, closer this time, reverberating through the trees. Eventually, I suggested we call it a night. "We've got a big hike planned for tomorrow," I said, forcing a smile. My friends nodded, clearly relieved to have an excuse to retreat into their tents. We all said our good nights, but as I lay in my sleeping bag, sleep eluded me. The forest felt too alive, too watchful, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there. Hours later, I was jolted awake by a sharp howl that cut through the night like a knife. It was unlike any sound I had ever heard, powerful, haunting, and undeniably close. My heart raced as I sat up, straining to hear over the pounding of my own blood. The howl echoed again, and I could feel it vibrating in my bones. It was a sound that filled me with dread. I peeked outside my tent, my breath catching in my throat. The moon hung high in the sky, illuminating the clearing with an otherworldly glow. But the forest beyond was dark, the shadows shifting like something alive. I glanced over at my friends' tents, and to my relief I saw that they were all still asleep. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. It was probably just the wind, I told myself, or maybe a wolf, a wild animal that had wandered too close. But then I heard it again, a guttural growl that sent chills racing down my spine. This time, it was followed by the sound of branches snapping. I felt a surge of panic, realizing that whatever it was not leaving. I quickly crawled out of my tent, the cool air hitting me like a slap, and made my way to the campfire, my heart pounding in my chest. "Guys," I whispered urgently, shaking Jake's tent. "Wake up!" "What's wrong?" he mumbled sleepily, peeking out. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Listen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I gestured toward the dark tree line. "Something's out there." Slowly, my friends emerged from their tents, groggy and confused. But as they listened, their expressions shifted from sleepiness to concern. The growl came again, this time more distinct, and I could see the fear creeping into their eyes. "Maybe we should pack up and head back to the car," Sarah suggested, her voice trembling. "I don't like this." "Let's just wait a little longer," I urged, though I wasn't sure if I believed my own words. The night felt heavy, suffocating, and the shadows loomed like dark sentinels around us. We huddled around the fire, its warmth providing a fleeting comfort. The howling continued, a chilling reminder that we were not alone. I could feel the tension mounting among us, the silence punctuated only by the crackling of the fire and the occasional howl. Then, just as I thought we might settle back down, a sound pierced the air, something crashing through the underbrush, approaching rapidly. We froze, our eyes wide with fear, and then it happened. A massive figure burst into the clearing, its silhouette framed by the moonlight. It was a wolf, but not like any wolf I had ever seen. It was enormous, easily the size of a small horse, with matted fur that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. Its eyes glowed like embers, locking onto ours with an intensity that stole my breath away. We stumbled back, panic coursing through our veins. The creature growled again, a deep, rumbling sound that reverberated in my chest. I felt the primal instinct to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the ground, unable to move. "Get inside the tents!" I shouted, my voice breaking. My friends scrambled for safety, and I grabbed a nearby flashlight, shining it toward the creature. Its eyes flickered momentarily, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it took a step forward, and I could see its massive teeth glistening in the firelight. "Stay back!" I yelled, heart racing. The creature paused, its head tilting slightly as if it were studying us. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat, the air thick with fear. What was this thing? In that moment, it occurred to me that it wasn't just a wolf. It was something else entirely, a manifestation of our worst nightmares, a creature that belonged in a horror story. I glanced back at my friends who were peeking out from their tents, fear etched on their faces. "Do you think it's just a wild animal?" Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. "No," I said, my voice trembling. "This isn't normal." Before I could react, the creature lunged forward, its powerful body surging toward us. We scrambled back, our instincts screaming at us to run, but we were trapped. It circled us, growling low and menacing, its eyes never leaving mine. I felt a chill run down my spine as I tried to understand what I was witnessing. Why wasn't it attacking? What was it waiting for? The creature seemed to thrive on our fear, reveling in the chaos it created. Then, in an instant, it turned and darted back into the shadows, disappearing into the forest as quickly as it had come. We stood there, stunned, the echoes of its growl fading into the night. "What just happened?" Matt asked, his voice shaky. "Did we just escape?" "I don't know," I replied, my heart still racing, "but we need to get out of here, now." We scrambled to pack our things, adrenaline fueling our movements. I could still feel the creature's gaze burning into me, its presence haunting the edges of my mind. As we hurried to gather our gear, I glanced back at the dark trees, half expecting to see it lurking just beyond the light. Finally, we made it to the car, our breaths coming in quick bursts. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever had stalked us through the woods. But there was nothing, just the dark outline of trees, standing like silent sentinels. Days passed, and we returned to our daily lives, but the experience haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had come too close to something we weren't meant to see. What had that creature been? A guardian of the forest? A figment of our fears brought to life? Or something more sinister, lurking just out of sight? Every night, I lay awake, replaying the events in my mind. I searched online for answers, hoping to find someone who had encountered the same creature, but all I found were stories of wolves and bears. Nothing felt right. I felt like I had stepped into a different world, one where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. What had we witnessed that night? The growl still echoed in my ears, a haunting reminder that the forest held secrets we might never understand. I often returned to that clearing in my dreams, and each time I felt the weight of its eyes upon me, the chill of its presence lingering like a shadow. As I stared into the darkness outside my window, I wondered if that creature still roamed those woods, waiting for the next group of campers to stumble into its territory. Would it ever reveal its true nature? Or would it forever remain a mystery, a dark secret whispered only in the wind? The questions lingered, an unsettling weight on my chest. And as I closed my eyes, I could still hear the echo of that howl, a haunting reminder that some things are better left unexplored. Some things are meant to stay hidden in the shadows. My name is Alex, and I'm 35 years old. There's nothing quite like the thrill of hiking through the dense forests with my dog Max by my side. The freedom of the trails, the whispering leaves, and the crisp, clean air invigorate me like nothing else. Every weekend, I would lace up my boots and set off into the wilderness, losing myself in the beauty of nature. But that last hike would haunt me forever. It was a bright Saturday morning when I decided to explore a new trail I had heard about from a fellow hiker. The sun was shining, and the forest beckoned me with its promise of adventure. Max, my loyal German shepherd, bounded ahead, tail wagging with uncontainable excitement. I chuckled to myself, watching him leap through the underbrush, his playful spirit reminding me why I loved these excursions so much. The trail wound deeper into the forest, the trees growing denser as I ventured further. I took a moment to appreciate the serenity around me, the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves, the occasional call of a distant bird, and Max's paws crunching on the fallen leaves. We were in our element, free and alive. But as I continued down the path, the atmosphere began to shift. The sunlight started to fade, the canopy thickening overhead, casting eerie shadows across the ground. A strange stillness settled over the woods, the sounds of nature diminishing as if the forest was holding its breath. I shrugged it off, attributing it to my imagination, but a slight unease began to creep into my mind. "Come on, buddy," I called to Max, who had stopped to sniff a particularly interesting patch of ground. "Let's keep moving." He bounded back to my side, and together we pressed on, determined to see what lay ahead. After about an hour, we reached a clearing where the trail split into two paths. I pulled out my phone, checking the maps, but there was no signal. Frustrated but not deterred, I decided to take the left path, thinking it looked slightly more promising. Max seemed to agree, wagging his tail enthusiastically as we ventured further into the unknown. As we hiked deeper, the light dimmed even more, the sun barely breaking through the thick branches above. A sense of foreboding settled in my gut, but I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just the isolation of the woods playing tricks on my mind. I turned to Max, who had begun to grow more alert, his ears perked up and eyes scanning the surroundings. "Everything okay, buddy?" I asked, but he only let out a low growl, his body tense. I felt a chill run down my spine, but before I could dwell on it, I heard something. A low, guttural growl resonating from somewhere deep within the woods. It echoed through the trees, a sound so primal that it sent shivers racing down my arms. Max barked, his fur bristling, and I felt my heart race. "It's probably just a bear," I muttered to myself, though I knew deep down that the sound was unlike anything I had ever encountered in these woods. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity tugged at me, a desire to know what had made that sound. "Let's check it out," I said, trying to sound brave. I felt foolish as soon as the words left my mouth, but Max seemed to share my curiosity, leading the way with his nose to the ground. We moved cautiously, the underbrush crackling beneath our feet, every sound amplified in the eerie stillness. After what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon a large clearing. My breath caught in my throat as I took in the scene before me. There, standing at the far edge, was a massive creature, far larger than any wolf I had ever seen. Its fur was a matted blend of black and gray, and its eyes glowed like two burning coals in the fading light. "Max, stay close," I whispered urgently, my heart pounding. The creature seemed to sense our presence, its massive head turning slowly in our direction. I could see its teeth glistening in the dim light, sharp and menacing. Panic surged within me, urging me to retreat, but I felt paralyzed, unable to tear my gaze away from the beast. It didn't growl this time, it simply stood there, staring at me with an intensity that sent waves of dread crashing over me. I slowly backed away, my instincts screaming for me to run, but I dared not take my eyes off it. Max growled again, stepping protectively in front of me, and I could feel his muscles tense, ready to defend. Then, in a sudden burst of movement, the creature lunged forward, its powerful body surging through the underbrush. I barely had time to react, stumbling back as it closed the distance between us in an instant. "Max, go!" I shouted, the words spilling from my lips as adrenaline surged through me. We turned and ran, the forest blurring around us. The creature's growl echoed behind us, a haunting reminder of the danger we faced. I could feel the ground trembling beneath its weight, each heavy footfall reverberating through the air like a drumbeat of terror. "Come on, buddy, keep going," I urged Max, whose paws pounded against the ground as he sprinted ahead. We burst through the underbrush, the trees closing in around us, but I didn't dare slow down. I could hear the creature crashing through the foliage behind us, relentless and determined. Branches clawed at my arms and legs as we dashed through the dense forest, but I didn't feel the pain. My only focus was on escaping. "Where is the trail?" I thought desperately, trying to remember the path we had taken. Just then, I spotted a flash of light through the trees ahead. Could it be the trail? We pushed forward, bursting into a small clearing that led back to the main trail. The sight filled me with hope, and I forced my legs to move faster, urging Max along with me. Just as we reached the edge, I glanced back, my breath catching in my throat. The creature had slowed, hovering at the edge of the clearing, its glowing eyes locked onto mine. It stood tall and imposing, but something about its stance changed. It seemed almost curious, its growl fading into an eerie silence. "Please, just leave us alone," I pleaded, my voice shaking. But the creature didn't advance, it merely watched, and I felt a strange connection form in that moment. as if it was weighing my fear against something deeper, something ancient. "Max, let's go!" I yelled, breaking the trance. We dashed down the trail, the adrenaline fueling our flight. I could hear the forest thrumming with life around us, the sounds of nature returning as we escaped the beast's gaze. Finally, we reached the car parked at the trailhead, my heart pounding in my chest as I fumbled for my keys. I could still feel the creature's eyes on me, an indelible mark of fear and confusion. I jumped into the driver's seat, Max following closely, and slammed the door shut. My hands trembled as I started the engine, and I could hardly breathe as we sped away. The ride home felt surreal, my thoughts racing as I replayed the encounter over and over in my mind. What had I just witnessed? A wolf? A monster? I felt like I had crossed a line into a world I couldn't understand, a place where the rules of nature no longer applied. Days passed, but the memory lingered like a shadow, creeping into my thoughts at the most unexpected moments. I would sit on my porch, staring into the woods, half expecting to see the creature lurking just beyond the trees. Max, usually so full of energy, would sometimes stare into the forest as if sensing something I couldn't. I began researching the area, scouring online forums and articles, desperate to find someone who might have encountered the same beast. But all I found were stories of wolves, bears, and hikers who had gone missing. Nothing that truly captured the essence of what I had faced. The more I searched, the more questions I had. What was that creature? Was it a figment of my imagination, a manifestation of fear, or was it something more, something ancient that had watched over those woods long before we ever set foot there? I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, questioning my own sanity. Every night, I would wake in a cold sweat, haunted by the growl that echoed in my mind. I could still see the glowing eyes staring into my soul, unblinking and unyielding. I found myself standing at the edge of the woods, staring into the darkness, wondering if I would ever find the courage to return. I thought about taking Max back to that clearing, to face whatever haunted me, but the fear held me back. What if it was still there, waiting? What if it had sensed my fear and would return for me? As the weeks turned into months, I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the creature was out there, waiting for the moment I would let my guard down. I often found myself questioning my own reality. Had it been real, or had I imagined the whole thing? Every time I looked into the woods, I felt the pull of that encounter, a reminder of the boundary between our world and whatever lay beyond. The haunting howl still echoed in my mind, a whisper of the unknown. And as I sat on my porch, staring into the darkness, I wondered if I would ever find peace, or if that creature would always linger in the corners of my mind, waiting.